So welcome to day 4, and today we would be talking about Linux command line, and this Linux command line is basically focusing upon how and we could how and when we have to write what commands and what kind of command work for what kind of purpose, right? In case you have to apply everything in your terminal, in case you have to write everything in your terminal, how will you be able to copy the text, paste the text, or copy any file, paste any file, cut, move, copy, paste, delete, and create a folder, delete a file, right? And then basically how you can list out all the processes that are basically working right now in Linux, and how you could basically change the drive, right? List out the items in a folder, how you could print some working directories and all these things. So we are going to see all these things in today's session, right? We are going to basically have a look into some of the commands in Linux. Now this might seem a little bit overwhelming for the very first time, but it is very much important because you need to learn how Linux is currently used and how Linux is operated, right? If you do not know about how Linux is operated, it would be a little bit difficult for you guys to understand about security, and because obviously when you will be working in security, this is the prime operating system where you will be working. So I'm sharing my screen over here so you can basically check out, right? So let me share my screen, and I'll be quickly jumping back to VMware. So in the last session, the day 3, we basically saw how we could go through with how in the installation process of Kali Linux, and where it is available and how it is available, right? How to basically put it on your VMware. So obviously I have basically put it on my VMware, and here is my Kali Linux, as you can see. So this is basically called as grub, right? This black screen over here that you can see, this is called as grub or grub. This is basically the what we can say kind of bootloader that if you want to boot the operating system or not, or do you want to have do some advanced tasks with this operating system. So that is what we basically define with this particular thing. So let us just simply wait for it to boot, right? Because when it boots, we'll be going through with the further processes, right? So once you boot up the Linux, just like Windows, it would ask me my ID and password. So I have to give my username, which is Sanchay, and then my password that I have over here. So once putting in the password, Linux will boot me to my desktop, just like how any Windows boots you up onto your desktop. So here is my Linux Kali Linux desktop over here. As you can see, we have all the things just like how Windows is, just that we have the this particular taskbar on the above of the thing, right? Not on the bottom, just like Windows, but we have all these things, and we have like you know other things, like we have the start menu over here, then we have like other some of the icons, right? And then we have like some of the status bar icons over here, where it shows me the charging percentage, the internet that is currently connected, the time, calendar, volume, notifications, lock the screen, or if you want to switch off your Linux completely, right? So we have all these things over here, and these things are just like Windows, right? You could basically see that when you will be having VMware installed for the first time, right? Make sure when you basically go into this, you have to click on this particular button, right, which is called as full screen mode, to go inside full screen mode, right? So if I basically click on this full screen mode, then only I'll be able to go inside, and you can see currently I'm in the full screen mode. So once I am in the full screen mode, right, you will be having this particular status bar pinned, right? Because this would not unpin automatically, just like how it does in my case, right? So basically you have to click on this particular pin icon to unpin this particular thing, and as you click on it, the status bar of VMware would move up, right? So now you are inside Kali Linux, right? To come out of Kali Linux to your Windows, if you try to press Alt Tab, you cannot do that. If you try to press Windows key, it would open Kali Linux start menu. So you cannot directly come out of Kali Linux, right? There is no option to directly go out of Kali Linux over here to Windows, and you might feel distressed or basically unrest when you will be doing this for the first time, right? So first option through mouse is that you can just drag your mouse over here, and then you can see your VMware status bar. So you can click on the minimize icon, and here you basically come out of Kali into your Windows, right? Second option would be just press Control and Alt together. As soon as you press Control and Alt together, now this particular mouse icon changes back to my Windows, and I could basically do all kind of Windows shortcut, for example Windows D, Alt Tab, and all these things, right? So that is how it is, and this is basically how VMware basically works, right? So once you are into VMware, what you have to do is that you have to learn to operate terminal over here, and terminal is basically the shell, as I told you in the session day before yesterday. And the shell is basically the thing through which we do a lot of things, right? We basically try to focus upon how the things are working. We basically try to focus upon many of the different aspects of security, right, through terminal only, because terminal is our main part of the operating system, right? So over here I'll be just typing Control Alt T, right, which is the basic shortcut for opening a terminal window. So I'll be clicking on Control Alt T, and as soon as I click on it, you can see after a short while it opens my terminal, where I have to write everything, right? So my terminal is the main device, my terminal is the main piece of software where I have to write everything and where I have to give the commands, right? So this is much needed, right? This is what you have to learn, right? So basically you can see that I didn't open terminal through searching, or didn't open terminal through mouse clicking, right? Because this is what you need to learn. Otherwise you could basically try to type terminal emulator over here, and you might find your terminal. So you can just simply click on any of these and the terminal would open. Otherwise, in the modern Linuxes, terminal also comes as a shortcut above here, so you could also just mouse click on it, right? But the best part is to learn how to use how to use terminal through shortcuts only, right? Just simply click Control Alt T, and you will be able to bring up this terminal window, right? Just like how we have different kind of tabs in our browsers, right? We could have different kind of tabs in our terminal as well, and to do that you can then type Control Shift T, right, to open a new tab in the same terminal. So we have the same terminal, and we can like switch to different tabs over here, right? And obviously we can type, like for example, this particularly could be used for typing one command, this particularly if you want to see any other, and you can just simply switch between all these things, right, by simply just going with control shift shortcuts, right? And if you type Control Shift W, right, you can see that it starts closing the terminals right over here, and it closes, right? So basically that is how you can handle the terminal. In case if you really want to open a new window in terminal, which really helps a lot, you can just type Control Shift N, and it basically opens a new terminal window over here. So a new window of terminal, or in case if you basically want to open the different tabs in one terminal, it's totally upon you what you want to do and how you want to basically operate it, right? So that's totally up to you. I'll be pressing Control plus icon, right, which increases the size, Control plus minus icon, which decreases the sign. So Control minus decreases the size, and Control plus increases the size of the terminal. So we would be basically talking about some of the commands over here, right, and how to do these kind of things, right? So you can just make a note of all the commands that I'll be teaching you today, right? Because we would be going through with 10 to 15 commands today, right? And I know that for the very first time, if you don't practice the commands, you might feel a little bit overwhelmed, or you might basically feel a little bit underconfident to use Linux, right? So in case if you're playing with these commands, then only you will be able to understand. If you really want to start learning Linux, you have to start using it, right? And if in case you are just exploring the sessions, let's say not even the HackersVilla session, let's say you're going to different other sessions that are talking about Linux, you are learning commands from here and there, you are reading books about commands, you are watching YouTube videos about Linux commands, these kind of knowledge won't matter unless and until you start practicing it yourself, right? If you do not have Kali installed, if you do not have any Linux version installed in your PC, you won't be able to get use of that particular knowledge. So this is something that you need to remember, right? In case if you are learning something new, please do practice, because cybersecurity really needs a lot of practice, right? So over here, this is our terminal. Let me just explain you a little bit about the terminal over here, how these things are managed, and what is particularly written over here, and what does it mean, right? It specifically have some meaning over here. So let me open my pen so that I could understand. I could make you understand all these things. Just a sec. Okay, so here we have this particular thing, right? So here it's written Sanchay. So Sanchay is basically the username of my the user which I basically opened over here. So this is the username. This is basically how the things are basically defined over here. So yeah, we have the usernames over here, and then we basically have the PC name, which is in Linux called as host name, right? So this is basically called as host name, and it's basically the computer name, or what's the name of the computer in the system, right? Just like every Windows PC have a PC name or a Windows computer name, and just like that, HackersVilla is basically the name of the host, or name of my Linux PC over here. Sanchay is the username through which I have logged in. HackersVilla is basically the host name of this particular Linux installation. Then like these two things are fine. Then we basically have these two things over here. A tilde symbol. Tilde is basically the name of this particular, this congruency symbol, which you can find above the tab icon, right? And then we also have like a dollar symbol after it, right? So these two have some specific meaning, right? This tilde symbol refers to the home directory, right? It refers to the home directory of the corresponding user who have logged in, right? So this basically refers or takes you, or it's basically a shortcut to basically specify the home directory, right? And home directory is basically the directory where you have desktop, documents, photos, and all these things. For Windows, if you do not know about the home directory, for Windows, home directory is something like this, right? In Windows, the home directory is in OSC. Then you have to go into users, and you have to select your user over here. So this is basically my home directory, right? If you can see the location, uh, you see to users to Sanchay over here. This is basically my home directory location over here, and this home directory location is basically the location in my Windows, right? So if we basically compare over here, it's something like this, right? So this is the home directory in my Windows, right? So you can see in Windows the home directory is basically like this. But if I talk about Linux, right, Linux have home directory at a very separate place. Linux basically have the home directory at home/Sanchay, right? So Linux is basically having the location /home/Sanchay, right? And corresponding user, obviously, if there is a user called as Bootcamp, so that particular user will be having home directory like this, right? If particular user have the name, let's say Sing, so that particular username, that particular home directory would look like this, right? In Windows, this basically happens over here. So if some user have the name Sing, so this particular home directory would look like this. Also, one more thing that we could basically feel in our Linux and Windows is that Windows uses backticks, backslashes, and Linux uses forward slashes, right? So Linux basically uses forward slashes and Windows uses backslashes. So this is like one of the prominent difference in how Windows and Linux are considered, right? So obviously something that you need to remember, right? So over here we have the home directory for Windows over here and Linux over here, right? So instead of writing this whole location, right, Linux basically have a shortcut symbol for it, which is this particular symbol. So if I tell Linux that to go on to this particular thing, if I tell Linux that if you have to basically go on this particular thing, Linux will be moving on to this particular thing, right? So this is like just a shortcut for the home directory of the current user who is logged in, right? Just remember, the current user who is logged in has the same home directory system over there, right? So right now, this is the thing. If I basically try to print that currently in which directory I am in, I have to type the command pwd, which means print working directory, that currently where am I, right? So you can see if I type it, I am currently in the Kali user, right? So you can see my user is a little bit confusing for somebody who was learning Linux for the first time, because over here you could basically see that Linux have different kind of groups as well, and my group name is Kali, right, which was also my previous username, right? So I changed that username from Kali to Sanchay, and it changed everywhere, but it didn't change the location of my username, right? So still my basic, like this particular location of my Sanchay username is /home/Kali, right? So as I told you, /home/Kali is basically where my home directory is for the Sanchay user, right? And this basically shows you the location, right? This tilde sign so shows you the location, that where your terminal is opened currently, right? That currently आपका जो terminal है वो है कहाँ पर, बिकॉज आपका टर्मिनल किसी एक लोकेशन पे ओपन हुआ है, टर्मिनल हैज़ बीन ओपनड इन वन ऑफ द लोकेशन, सो इट नीड्स टू नो दैट where currently your location is, where currently your Kali is located, your terminal is located. So that is how we basically have the solution of this particular thing, right? So we have this particular location over here, we have this home/Kali over here, which is basically the location currently where I am in case you want to know the full location where you are, you have to type the command pwd to see where you are, right? And if I open this home folder in a GUI manner, it basically is something like this, right? This is my home folder, this is my /home/Kali, and this is my home folder full of a lot of clutter data, right? Coming from the last 1 year, and over here literally a lot of trash data is basically stored inside over here, and I know I have to basically manage it, but over here you can see we have literally a lot of things that are basically scattered over here. So yeah, this is basically our home folder. Now in case if I want to see all these folders and files that are basically given to me, right, in my terminal, I have to type the command ls. Now ls is basically the command that gives me list thing, right? That I want a list of all the things over here, so please do give me a list, or how many things or which particular things are basically inside my PC. So I have to inside current folder where I am. So basically I have to type ls command over here, and ls command would basically give me this. So if I type ls, you can see that I get a lot of things over here, which is basically giving me the list of all the things that I am needing over here. So you can see we have like the files 1.sh over here, which is a script file, right? And you can basically see that there are color coding, right? There is a color coding through which I am getting all the things, and if you can understand this color coding process, you can see that we have like all these purple color ones, which are the image files, right? We have dark blue, right, which are basically the folders. We have the white ones, which are basically the files over here, and then we also have kind of these kind of files as well, which are basically the hidden or some I don't know, temporary files, right? Then we could basically have aqua color ones, which are basically the scripts that could be executed, right? So there are like different kind of color coding in many different types of operating systems, right? This is not specific to all the Linuxes, right? This is only specific to Kali Linux, this color coding, right? Any other Linux, for example, Ubuntu might have a different type of color coding, right? Parrot might have a different type of color coding, so it doesn't matter what kind of color coding we are talking about, right? This is basically the color coding in Kali Linux. Okay, many of the Linuxes like Arch Linux and other Linuxes do not have these kind of color coding. It shows everything in white basically. So you have to understand what is what, right? So this is basically the ls function, right? I just told you ls. Over here you can see that I just typed ls and it showed me the list of all the things. So obviously currently I am inside my home directory, so obviously I can see that all kind of things, right, that I can see over here. So now let's say that I want to go in this particular folder. This particular folder is my hack folder, and I want to go inside this hack folder. So I can simply double click and go inside hack folder. It's an empty folder though, but I want to go inside this hack folder and Obviously I can double click and I can go inside, but for if I want to do the same thing in my Kali Linux, like in my terminal, how do I go into how do I do this? For doing this, I'll be typing cd into hack. So cd means change directory, right? So because I know that the current directory, the home folder, is containing the hack over here, hack folder over here, I can just type ls to check it. So in case if I type ls, you can see that I'll be getting hack folder over here. So I know that there is a hack folder. Now I want to go inside this hack folder. So to go inside the hack folder, I have to just simply type uh, you know cd into hack, right? So this is what I have to type. So cd means change directory into hack folder. So if I type this cd into hack, it will directly take me to the hack folder, right? So if I press enter, it takes me to the hack. Not only it takes me to the hack, but it also changes the location over here. So it basically tries to change the location as well over here, and it also basically, like, I can keep in track that where currently I am, right? So currently I am in /home/kali/hack folder, which I can verify using pwd command, and over here there is my full location /home/kali/hack. So this is my current location. Over here we can basically see the location as well, right? So currently I am in this particular location in the hack folder, and again I can type ls to basically check out what files are there in the hack folder. And in the GUI we know that it's an empty folder, so if I type ls, nothing will be outputted over here. So over here you can see, if I create a new file, let's say that if I create a new document and empty file, let's call it a sample file, right? So let's call it sample over here. So you can see I created a sample file, and now if I go back in the terminal, type ls, you can see I can see the sample file over here, right? Pretty simple. So you could basically see that is how you could operate the whole Linux right through a simple terminal window, right? So these are like very simple commands, right? These are three simple commands currently shown on one screen. These are the building body parts of the roadmap of how to learn Linux, right? So you need to learn these commands very well, right? And please do not get confused in what is ls and what is cd, what is pwd. It can only happen that if you confuse these things, that means you want to rectify the commands, but that is not what you have to do, right? Because I still remember that when I was a first year college student, obviously I was knowing how to operate Linux, and many of the people were coming from the background where they didn't use Linux at all, right? So obviously in our college we had Ubuntu installed on all the computers, so it was like a heaven to me that I get to practice Linux directly in my college itself. But point is that many of the people were not having any knowledge about Linux. So when the teachers told them to operate a software, they have to first of all type cd, then second they have to type ls, third step they have to again type cd, then ls, then this, then this. So many of the students rectify that particular process, and they when they forgot what to do, they were just like doing a lot of it in trial, right? They were trying ls first, then they were trying cd, then they were trying ls. So and they were not knowing what they are doing, right? And then basically they were going to some different directories which do not even exist, and then the error comes that directory does not exist, and then they're asking the teacher in the practicals that, ma'am, the Linux is not working, right? So obviously this is something which would not help you, right? This would only help you if you really practice, if you really understand the meaning of what is ls, what is cd, and how these things are basically working. So you need to basically understand all these things, and you need to basically understand the way how these things are built, right? So ls is basically to list out to list out all the files and documents in a particular directory. By directory I mean a simple folder, right? And to basically switch to any kind of other directory, you have to type the cd command, which would take you to different directories whenever you want to, right? pwd on the other hand would give you the current working directory, that your Linux is currently open in which particular directory. So these are the three basic, very basic commands that you need to remember over here, right? So let's move forward and let's understand that okay, now I'm in this in this particular hack folder. Let's say now I want to create different files. How do I do that? Right. For example, I just showed you this RMRF have potential to delete home directory. Yes, it have the potential to delete not the home directory, but it have the potential to delete the whole system. I'll tell you in a while how that particularly works. Right. So basically over here you could see that now let's go over and let me tell you that how we can go through create a new file. For example, over here you can see I created a new file by right clicking, create document, empty file, selecting the name. For example, in case I want to create a Java file, I have to create, like, let's say test.java, and then press enter, and then we have the Java file. So this is like a very long process of doing all these things, right? So let me delete first of all. So let's say if I want to do it in my terminal, I can just simply type a command touch. So touch is the command through which I can basically create all the files. Let me just make my this particular thing down so that you can see what we are doing over here, right? So above we are getting the output, and here we are typing the commands. So basically what I'll be doing, I'll be typing touch over here, and this touch command is basically the command that would be creating files. So let's say if I want to create a Java file, right? So one.java, press enter, and we have the Java file over here, right? Now let's say I want to create 2.cpp, a C++ file. We have it over here. Let's say we want to create a Python file. Let's say we want to create two files together, 3.python, and let's say I want to create a PHP file as well, 4.php, and I want to create a shell file, script file as well. I want to do that. Press enter, and we are having three files all together. So you can see how quick it is, right? I do not have to worry about just right clicking every time creating a file one by one. With terminal I can do the same thing. I can just type one command, give the 5 names, and we have all the files created, right? We could even write a script where we can run for loop, and we could basically create as number of files as we want. That is how Linux basically works, how easy it is to basically operate Linux, right? You can understand the process, you can understand the things over here, you can understand how the things are working, and obviously it would give you a lot of scope, it would give you a lot of things to do, because now it is much more flexible, right? You do not have to do anything one by one. You can create any kind of file. You could try to try to do different things with different files, right? So let's say if I want to create something like a file with my name, so I can just type something like this. Why I basically took this particular file name in this particular thing, right? With this particular um, you know let's say I want to create a txt file. Why did I basically did this with double quotation mark? Because if I don't do that, this space would basically delimit both the things, and I'll be creating two different files. I'll be creating a file called as Sanchay. Like, for example, if I do something like this, this particularly would mean that it would create one file called as Sanchay and then second file called as sing.txt. But in case if I want to create a file Sanchay space sing.txt, I have to give the quotation marks. So if I do that, you can see I've got Sanchay sing.txt over here, right? So pretty simple. We have got the files something like that, and this is how I can create the files. Pretty easy, right? How I can create a file, how I can, and just like that, if you want to create a new folder, for folders you have to create you have to type the command mkdir. Now mkdir is basically the command that means make directory or create a new folder, right? Again, here applies the same rule. If you, let's say I want to basically create folder, for example sample, and there is also one more folder that I want to create, would be like new, right? So I'll just press enter, and you can see we have both the new folders, sample and new, right? Pretty easy. If I want to delete any folder, I can type rmdir, and also I can delete one folder at a time, or I could basically delete two folder at a time by just typing both the names, right? So currently new is only left, so I'll be deleting new as well. So you can see pretty easy. I can just do all these things with this particular task, right? Mkdir creates the file, rmdir creates a folder, rmdir removes a folder, touch creates a file, and rm deletes a file. For example, if I type rm And if I type 4.php, I want to remove 4.php, press enter, and you can see 4.php is now not over here. 4.php has been deleted, right? So that is how easy it is, right? And even you could give all the names directly, giving a space, right? And we can just simply delete all the files what we want directly in one go, right? So you do not have to worry about anything, right? Touch command gives you the way to create a file, right? Mkdir gives you the way to create a folder. Rmdir deletes an empty folder. Just mark my words, it deletes only empty folder, but rm has the potential to delete non-empty folders as well. I'll tell you how. Then rm can also delete the files, right? So basically that is how these things are basically working, and that is the main thing that we are basically talking about in today's time, right? So this is something that we need to work upon, right? Because this is how the things are basically working, right? So we have touch to create the files, and rmdir to remove the folders, mkdir to create the folders, and rm to remove the files, right? Pretty simple. So these are like 4 commands that you have over here. You can take the screenshot, or obviously this video would be recorded, this video is being recorded and would be sent directly to the YouTube, right? So obviously you can just, if you are seeing the recording, you can pause the video, and you can just check out how this particular thing could help you, right? So over here we have this thing. Now let's go forward, and let's try to insert some data in a file, right? So let's see how we can basically insert some data in a file, just with the help of my terminal, right? So again, I'll be typing Control L, or you could also type clear command to clear all the clutter in the terminal that you have caused, right? So I can just type clear, and terminal will get cleared. The shortcut is Control L if you do not want to write clear all the time, right? So over here, that is the thing. And now the point is that we want to open a file, we want to insert some data in a particular file. So how do I do that, right? So basically, let's say what we have to do, uh, let me just go over here. Let's say if I want to go over to write something in my Java file, obviously what I can do is either I could download a Java IDE over here, right? Something that could basically write a Java and compile the Java, run it. We know that Windows have a lot of alternatives, a lot of IDEs. For example, I may have Eclipse or something, right? So you can see this is Eclipse that I have installed, right? And this basically is used for writing Java files, compiling Java files, and running them, right? But in Kali, there you might need them, or the best part is you don't need them, right? So let's say if I want to write in a Java file, I can just simply double click it, and it would basically give me something like mousepad, where I could basically write the Java code and obviously execute it, right? So this is one thing that I can do. But I want to write any kind of Java, if I want to write it inside my terminal. Now how do I do the same thing in my terminal, right? So inside terminal, I could basically write anything into any file through a particular thing called as nano, right? So nano and then the file name, right? So nano, the file name. That is how we can do. Now, till this time, you might have realized what we are basically doing. We are basically typing the name of the command, right? And then we are basically typing the file name. So this is the basic format that you might have observed over here. Command file, command file, command file, command file. For example, you want to delete a file. So rm is the command, and file name is basically anything, for example 1.java, right? You want to basically, let's say that you want to create a file, so command name is touch, right? And the file name could be like 2.php. So that is how these things are basically done, right? These things are done. The format remains the same. You have to type the command name first of all, and then the file which you want to manipulate, right? So over here again we have the same thing. We have this nano, which basically means that this is my command, and 1.java, this is basically my file, right? Again, the thing that I opened over here, if you could basically see that if I double click, it opens in mousepad. which is an alternative of Notepad for Linux, right? And I could open mousepad with terminal as well, right? If I write this particular thing, mousepad1.java, it would open the same mousepad, but this time through my terminal, right? So if I close it, Alt F4, I come back to my terminal. So that is one thing which I can do, but I do not want a editor which needs mouse input. I would be needing an editor which can be opened directly inside my terminal. So for that, the terminal, the editor is called as Nano, which is one of the best and one of the very basic terminal editor that most of the beginners use, right? As experienced people and I personally like to use Vim, which is much more complicated to use, right, in a terminal. But you'll get used to it when you will be working, when you will be having like 2-3 years, sorry, 2-3 months of experience in Linux. You'll be then able to run this particular thing, right, with this Vim software. But right now let's work on Nano, and then I have to give the name of the file. So nano space 1.java, press enter, and it opens something like this. Now this is where I have to write the code or write anything in the file. So let's say if I want to write a Java code, so class main, and let's basically go with the public static void main. So this is basically the Java code that I am writing over here. So string args, taking the command line input, and then system.out.println hello world. So I'm basically writing hello world inside Java file. So let's close this one and close this one. So this is a basic hello world program in my Java. So I'll be saving it. To save it, you can see what I did. I typed Control O and then I pressed enter over here, and as soon as I did it, you can see it changed the icon and the color to Java over here, because it understood that I wrote a Java code, right? And over here, if you do want to know what I did or where I am, just I know how, what button I have to press, you can see it's written below over here. So you can basically see that in case if I want to write to a particular file, or in case if I want to basically write something into a file, I have to press Control O. So as soon as I press Control O, it writes basically to a file, right? With Control W, I can basically see that if I want to search for some particular thing in a file, right, the find option, basically I can do that. Control K will cut, Control U will paste the particular thing, right? So that is how the things would be working over here, right? So let's say if I basically select this system.out.print line, and now I basically want to, let's say, so obviously I cannot select it one by one. If I can, no. So yeah, it's not selecting properly, but yeah, if in case I try to do it with my mouse, I could basically try to press Control K, right, which basically cuts it, and Control U to paste the above thing, right? So like it have some of the complications where you might need to use mouse over here in Nano, but Vim is totally free of these things, and obviously it's a better alternative to Nano that most of the experienced people like to use, right? So but Nano is cool for the people who are starting out, and it's not that much complicated to understand. So you have to type Control W for Control O for writing into a file, and to exit you have to type Control X. So if you do that, you will be coming out of that. So now let's go into the second file, which is a C++ file. Let's try to write inside that using the same Nano. So nano2.cpp, press enter, and over here we are inside. So let's write hash include iostream, right, which is basically our program for C++. So let me write the basic. So we can again just type hello world. People who might have learned C++ would be able to relate to the hello world code. So over here we have this, and again Control O to write into the file, Control X to come out of the file. Again, it understood that it's a CPP file, so it basically gave it a black colored extension. So let's go into 3.py, right? Let's write simple print hello world, because this is Python, so obviously we can type print hello world over here, right? And yeah, that's it. Then we can basically open a script. So nano5.sh. This script file is basically the file which uh, is basically the main file where I could basically try to script something, or I could create a script. You might have heard the word scripting in cybersecurity. So scripting basically means that you are trying to automate some of the things, and by automation I mean that all the commands that I can run in my terminal, I can write all these commands over here directly at once. So this is how it basically works. For example, first of all I have to include my shell. So for that I have to use hash apostrophe, which means shebang. It's basically called as shebang, right? This particular first line is basically called as shebang, where I'm basically giving it the access to my bin bash, right? Basically I'm telling it that where currently my shell is located, and where basically how I'll be basically taking the access. So I basically gave it the location for my shell where it's located currently, and then I can do anything. For example, I can echo over here, hi user, I am doing ls, or I'm executing ls command, because, or we can just type it like this. So that is what we have typed, and you can see hi user, I'm executing ls, and then I can just simply type ls over here. So this ls command will be executed as a ls command, right, directly with the shell. So this is how cool, right? We can basically write anything over here, and we could try to create our own tool, or we could basically script something that we usually do, right? So that is the thing. Any special purpose of using return, like it's if it's absent, it will not make any difference. So basically what happens is that when you're using return with any of the function, or with any of a like any particular program like Java or something like that, so return makes sense very much, right? I know that for a person who is into C++, and he will look like that if if I do not give return, then also it's fine. But you know what happens, I have an answer to your question practically. I'll just tell you. Let me just save this file. So over here you can see that this is basically my ls command, and ls command will be executed, right, as a system command with this particular thing. For example, now I want to use 10 commands in my Linux to basically create a hacking script, right? So I can basically list out all the commands, and I can basically tell my script at which command to execute for which particular thing, and then at what time you have to execute at what script, and obviously we'll be able to write a script that could hack into something, creating a particular hacking tool or something like that. So that is why these sh files or script files are basically created. So I'll be just typing control O and go back to control X to save this file. Yeah. So to give your answer, shadow or identifier, it would be great if you could give your name, or if you could tell your name so that I could address you, right? So this is a very nice question of having the return. Let me give you the answer to it, right? So over here you could basically see that if in case you do not give return, doesn't make any difference, right? So for knowing that, let's try to create a C++ program inside the C++ uh, compiler that we have in Windows, right? So I'll be writing the same program twice using namespace std, right? Sorry, int main, and over here we have like cout hello world, right? So this time if I basically execute this particular thing, it would be executed something like this, and it would basically give me a return value, right? So over here you could basically see that what it does, that it basically returns with some value over here. So you can see that process exited after this much seconds with return value 0. So it returned with value 0 over here, right? So let's say that if in case we want to do something like if in case I want to basically give like return 10, if I press enter, you can see the code exited, right, after this much seconds with return value 10. So if you can basically see over here, it gives the same return value what I'm returning over here. So what does this return basically means? This is a very simple thing, that it could return something in case if you are basically returning anything. For example, if I basically try to write 1 out of 0. Now this is basically an exception, right? This is basically the where my error would occur, right? Because I know that if I'm going with 1 upon 0, it would be never defined, so it would try to basically break the code. And if I run it, you can see that it's not running directly, right? If it's basically not running directly, and over here you can see that we are getting a return value, right? So we are basically using a return value over here. That means by default what happened, as soon as my code broke, right, as soon as my code basically went to count 1 upon 0 and it could not count, it basically gave me a return value, right, which is a very random return value, if you can see. But if I copy this return value and if I basically go back to, you know, my browser and type the number over here, press enter, you can see that this particular return value is basically a zero division error, right? And these returns values basically are defined, that what kind of return value is basically for what kind of error over here. So it's a zero division error that you can basically see over here, right? So that is how return values are useful. Right, now let's say if you're creating a big program and you want to basically give like if and else over here, right? So I could basically give over here like if somebody is trying to do, like if the input comes, or if you are basically trying to do 1 upon 0, right? What I want to do, I'll basically throw an error, right? So I am handling the error. Let's say if I'm giving that, if I'm basically giving a user to give two inputs like 1 and 0, or like input 1 and input 2, and if he chooses 1 upon 0, so I could write if user does 1 upon 0, what I'll be doing in the if condition is that throw error, right? Throw error or manage the error. So I can manage the error over here, right? So manage the error, and then I could basically come out and I can basically say that return 0. So if I'm writing return 0 over here, and now if I'm running this particular program, obviously if the user does 1 upon 0, right, obviously user we will be managing the error, or we will be telling the error directly to the user. So we won't be stopping the program, but instead of stopping the program, we would be telling the error to the user, and then we would be returning the program at the end with return 0, which would tell ultimately a developer that the program has been returned with 0 errors, right? There are 0 warnings, 0 errors that the program has worked with, and that is why it's a good practice to use return 0 after every condition, right, after every code. So that is how it makes sense. Although if you do not do return 0, it would ultimately do return 0, right? But still, this is something that's a good practice, and because it basically manages the code, right? When we are writing literally 1000 lines of code in C++ or something like that, it might happen that your code might basically work, or your code might basically give some different error. So if you're managing those errors, if you're not managing those errors, right, if your code returns with 0, that means that your code has been managed, or your code has been working properly. But if in case it basically shows that any other return code, that okay, this is something which I did not intend, and my code has been broken at some place. So that is why it is very much required, right? So very good question over here asked by you, right? Okay, so go back to Linux over here, as we were basically just talking about the last commands, right? So this is how I could basically type in a certain file, or this is how I could basically go into a certain file, or type into those particular files. So pretty easy, not that much tough to basically create a file, or just simply write into a particular file, right? Now the last question is that how do I delete some of the folders, as we discussed before, right? For example, if we have some folder over here, let's say if we want to have or we could basically how we could copy paste, right? So let's also talk about copy paste. So let's create a folder called as sample. So now you can see we have a sample folder over here. Let me open it in a new window, and okay, it's Rudra. Okay, so we can basically give it over here, and So let me just simply open this folder as well. Yeah, so we are basically having the sample folder opened over here. Let me just also change the width of the folder so that we can see all the content inside our hack folder. Yeah, so now you can basically see this is the basic this is our basically sample folder, and this is basically our hack folder over here. So what I have to do is that, let's say if I want to copy the files from my hack folder to the sample folder, I can simply type like copy one.java to sample, right? So just press enter and you can see it went over there. So it's just like command, right? Source and destination, right? This is the main scenario. You have to basically give a command, and then you basically have to give the source, and then you basically have to give the destination out of it. So command, source, destination, that is how it works upon, right? You have to give the command, then you have to give the source, and then you have to give the destination, right? This is how it basically works, right? So over here in this section over here, we are doing CP, which is copying all the things. So for example, copy, if I want to like give two files together, so it could be like source 1, right, source 2, and then the common destination where you want to take it, right? This is how you have to give it. So let's say I want to basically copy 2.java 2.cpp as well, and I want to basically copy 3.py as well, right, into the sample folder. So I can type sample over here, press enter, and copied. That is how I can do that. I want to remove the files from the sample folder. I can simply type rm, and then I can simply go inside sample over here. You can see sample 1.java, sample slash 1.java, and the file would be deleted from there. So you can see sitting in my hack folder, I can delete any file from any other folder as well, right? This is how Linux is flexible, right? Then let's say that I want to move some file, right? Let's say I want to move or cut paste my 1.java file. So move has the same kind of format, right? But this time what I'll be doing 1.java, and then I'll be giving basically the sample over here. So you can see 1.java has been moved over there. So 1.java has been moved, and now we know that okay, this is how these things are basically working. Our 1.java has moved over there, right? So we can also do this thing like move 2.cpp into sample, press enter, and 2.cpp has went over there, right? Move Sanchay Singh.txt went over, sorry. So we have to give like something like this, move Sanchay Singh.txt to sample, and that's done, moved, right? So that is how you could basically cut paste a file, or copy paste a particular file into some other folder or something like that. So that is how you can do. So for example, now if I type ls, we are only left with this sample folder, and we are basically left with two of the files. So now let's say that I want to delete this sample folder as well. So to delete this sample folder, I have to type in rmdir. So rmdir is the command, as I told you, to delete the sample folder. But if I do that, it would basically say that directory not empty, right? rmdir can only delete a folder which is non-empty, which is an empty folder, right? To delete an empty folder, you have to use rm with rf and then the folder name. Now what is this rf over here? What is this dash rf? Right, so this dash rf are basically, these are the switches, right? These are basically the power, the switches of rm command, right? Basically rm have different options that could be there, and dash r and dash f is one of the option that we would be needing to delete this sample folder, where r means recursion and f means forcefully, right? So basically I want to delete any of the file that would be inside this particular sample folder forcefully. For example, if any file would be opened, then it would have shown the error that this file is open, unable to delete. But because we are typing f over here, it would delete it forcefully, it would be closed and obviously deleted. And dash r means recursion. Now, the people who don't know what is recursion, a very simple thing to show you what is recursion is something like this. Just let me see that. Let's say if I go into HackersVilla channel over here, right, which is something like this, and let's say if I connect on any of the HackersVilla, you know, uh, let's go into this staff channel. Let's say where I could basically go. So you can see if I go into this channel and if I basically try to share the screen, right? So let me share the screen, right? And if I just start watching my own stream over here, right? So this is what recursion looks like, right? So recursion is inside something, inside something, inside something, inside something, inside till infinite times, right? So this is what recursion is, and this is how recursion could be seen, right? So you can see this is how my recursion works, right? And this is the very similar example to how recursion lies, right? Also we can see the example of recursion, example of recursion over here, right? If I go back to my browser over here, and if I type on Google recursion, right? So you know that whenever you basically go over to Google and type in any of the things, right, it basically gives you did you mean only when, right, only when you are typing any wrong spelling. But you can see over here I literally typed the right spelling of recursion. I typed RECURSIUN and over here RECURSIUN. So if I click on this recursion, it would take me to the same page. Again click, again the same page, again clicking, again the same page. So basically this is also one of the example of recursion over here, right? So recursion is basically going into 1 and 2 and 3 and then 4 and dividing further, right? So over here our sample folder is also working in a recursive manner. How? Something like this. Recursion is always in a tree manner, right? For example, you're starting at one particular point and then dividing it into 3 or 4, and then this is also dividing, right? Then this is dividing, then this is basically dividing into 3 4, right? So there are different form of recursions, and this tree recursion is one of the main form of recursion. So for example, you have this sample folder over here, and inside this sample folder, you let's say you have a file number 1, like 1.txt, you have file number 2, 2.java, right? And then you basically have a folder over here which is called as, let's say, new folder inside it, and this new folder might have more files into it. It have like 3 dot cpp, and have one more folder inside it. Let's say it have the folder called as Sanchay, right? And then this particular file has one more folder into it, sorry, one more file, this folder have one more file into it called as 4.sh. So this might be the case. Right now you can see it's in the tree form. So as soon as you just type this particular command rm-rf, it basically would see that okay, I have to go inside sample folder and I have to delete it in the recursive manner. That means I have to go and find these kind of files which are at the end. So it would first of all delete this 4.sh, right? Then this folder would get empty and this folder would be deleted, and this file would be deleted, and this folder will become empty, this folder would be deleted, then this file would be deleted, this file would be deleted, and this folder would be empty, then this would be deleted. So Linux basically works in this particular manner, in the recursive manner, right? Linux basically deletes all of the things, right? It basically goes into the recursion, come out of the recursion, deleting everything, right? That is how rmrf basically works, right? So if you basically type in this particular command rm-rf slash, so this would delete your whole system of Linux, because slash is the first directory where everything is installed, right? If in case I take you to the slash directory, you can see this is my file system where everything is currently installed in Linux. That is my slash directory, right? So if you delete the slash directory itself with rmrf, Linux would delete itself overall, and it would delete till the time it does not delete itself, and then it would reboot, and then it would say that no operating system found and you have to reinstall your Linux, right? So this is just like deleting the whole Linux using Linux itself. So never use this particular command, right? With like this particular command, this would basically break and remove everything into your PC, right? But over here, if I want to remove sample, I can basically remove something like this, and you can see sample folder has been deleted from my hack folder over here, right? So that is how the things are basically working, and that is how you could operate into Linux, right? So there are much more other commands that you could also use, but this is just a basic introduction that I've given you to Linux command line. Obviously, when we do boot camps, we take 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour sessions every day, right? Where we could basically talk much more about all these things, right? And yeah, So that would be all for Linux for today, right? Tomorrow we are sorry, not tomorrow, on Monday we are having the session on information gathering. So we would be talking about information gathering, and we would be talking about much more new topics, right? The topic names are basically written inside the group description, right, where you can basically check that what topic we would be taking tomorrow, and then after day after tomorrow, and all these things, right? So the question, can I install Kali and VMware in i3? Yes, you can, right? When I was a college student, I was basically having a laptop worth i3 third gen, I guess, and yeah, so I was basically running Kali into it. Just make sure you have at least 8 GB of RAM so that everything works fine. And if in case you have 8 GB DDR3 or an older laptop, it would work fine. No issues in that. I have also tried running Kali Linux in my 4 GB PC when I was very young, when I was in my class ninth, right? I only had 4 GB of RAM. I tried running virtual machine in that, it worked fine. I also had run in a 2 GB variant my laptop when it was only having 2 GB RAM at time. It was like 1 month, and in that time obviously it hanged a lot, but yeah, I was able to manage in 2 GB with Parrot, right? So you can, if you have like 2 GB RAM, even DDR3 or DDR4, you can still try running Windows 7 plus Parrot in your VMware. That would work fine and would not give you any kind of hang issues or something like that, right? But 4 GB of RAM, if you are having, you can 4 or 6, you can directly work on Windows 10 and this Kali Linux directly, right? So if you're having 4 GB of RAM, I would suggest you should go ahead with the older version of Kali, right? Kali 2020, Kali 2018, or Kali 2020. But if you are like having higher RAM, like 8 GB or more than 8 GB, you can go ahead with the latest version of Kali Linux, right? Then it won't affect your this RAM and all these things, right? So that is the thing. Okay, so that's all for today. Let's meet in the next session, day after tomorrow on Monday, right? Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for taking out 1 hour of your time for learning together, right? That's it for today, and we will be meeting on Monday. Thank you guys.